Well, hey there, it's Julie. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to take a moment to share something with you. One of the things I've learned about leadership, especially as a Christian woman, is that growth requires listening. And sometimes listening to God means being willing to change what used to work. Over the past season, I have felt a very clear nudge to bring more alignment and clarity to this podcast. Not because the message is wrong, but because God is inviting it to grow. Rebranding, when done in obedience, isn't about starting over. It's about refining. It's about naming what's already true and giving it language. So as this year comes to a close, this podcast is stepping into a new name and a clearer focus, one that reflects the conversations we've already been having here. Beginning today, this podcast will now be called Leadership Clearly. The heart of the show isn't changing. If anything, it's becoming more honest and more grounded. We'll be talking about leadership clarity, faith, burnout, discernment, calling, and what it looks like to lead well without striving. If you've been listening and sensing that something in your own leadership is shifting, I want you to know you're not behind. You're growing. Thank you for being here in this season as created for this. I'm truly grateful that you're walking this with me. Now, let's get to today's episode. Now, before we dive in, let me give you a quick but very intentional invitation. This podcast is incredible for the what and the why. But if you're listening and thinking, Julie, I need help with the how, I have built something specifically for you. If you're ready to install the full operating system for bold leadership, moving from high-performing contributor to a legacy leader, I want to invite you to our Legacy Leadership Intensive. This is my transformational coaching experience where we strengthen your communication, build faith-driven teams, and align your leadership with the kingdom impact you know you're called to make. This is where your faith, your experience, and your mission finally come into sync. So, if you're ready to invest in your growth and stop holding back your best work, head to the link in the show notes to learn more about the Legacy Leadership Intensive and save your spot. I would be truly honored to lock arms with you and walk into this next season together. Let's talk about recognition for a minute. Because I think we all know the difference between real recognition and the kind that sounds like, great job, team. All right, see you next week. You know, the one. It sounds fine, but it feels just as personal as a spam email. That's not what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the kind of recognition that makes someone stop and think, oh, she actually noticed. Here's the problem with generic praise. Our brains file it away almost immediately. It's vague, it's forgettable, and honestly, it can make people wonder if you even saw the late nights or the hard conversations or the quiet problem solving that saved the day. But intentional recognition, the kind that's specific, sincere, and personal, does something different. It builds trust, it creates belonging, and it fuels motivation in a way money and titles never will. I'll never forget one of the moments early in my career when I worked for a Fortune 50 company in the telecommunications industry. I was a director and I had an incredible team that I had the honor to lead. So we were in the middle of this project that has now affected your cell phone use today. I don't want to dive too deep into it, but it's pretty cool. But this project felt just completely unhinged. There were deadlines everywhere. I mean, I felt like there were multiple deadlines a day. Our stakeholders were full on legit panicking. And that plan itself changed daily. So my boss / mentor, she pulled me aside, not in a meeting, not publicly, just pulled me aside when she saw the absolute sheer doe in the headlights look, and I was probably pulling out my hair. And she just said to me, she's like, Julie, Your ability to bring calm and clarity into this current chaos has completely changed the outcome of this project. That is one of your superpowers. And I have to tell you, that moment has stuck with me, not because it was flattering, but because it was specific. It helped me see something about myself that I hadn't been able to name yet. And I realized at that time, oh, okay, so I don't just solve problems, I bring order to chaos. That right there was intentional recognition. And yes, my MBA brain loves the data. Research backs this up. Specific recognition increases engagement and lowers turnover. But my worship pastor's heart knows that this runs even deeper. Scripture tells us in 1 Thessalonians 5:11, encourage one another and build each other up. Building someone up means actually noticing them, not just what they do, but who they are and how they show up. So let's dive in on how to practice intentional recognition. How do we move from good job to recognition that actually lands? I want you to think about this less like a checklist and more like a leadership rhythm. So, first, pay attention. Some of the most impactful work never happens to see the spotlight. Who brought calm into an intense meeting? Who stayed late to fix something no one else wanted to touch? That's where real leadership shows up. Second, get specific. Instead of, thanks for your help, try this. Your attention to detail on that report gave us credibility and momentum going into the next quarter. Connect that action to the impact. That is where confidence is built. Third, don't wait. Recognition works best in real time, not 6 months later in a performance review, which, I mean, those are going to help anyways, but don't wait. When you notice it, say something. Fourth, you're going to make it personal. Some people love a public shout out. Others would rather crawl under the table. A handwritten note, a quiet conversation, or maybe just a thoughtful message can really mean everything. Leadership is knowing the difference and how your employee and the people that you're working with and communicating with, how they receive it. And finally, do this consistently. This is not a once a year thing. Make recognition part of how you lead. When people feel seen regularly, they show up differently. Now, from a faith perspective, Jesus modeled this perfectly. He led crowds, but he always noticed the individual. The woman who reached out and touched his cloak, Peter stepping out of the boat. He saw what others overlooked. That's intentional recognition at its highest level. Now, let's talk about what intentional recognition is not. I want to clear something up with you because I've seen recognition done wrong, even by really well meaning leaders. And I'm speaking this from personal experience. Intentional recognition is not flattery. It's not overpraising, and it's definitely not saying nice things because you feel awkward about holding somebody accountable. If you've ever thought, I don't want this to feel fake, that's actually really good instinct, and I want you to hone in on that. Here's the difference. Flattery is about making people feel good. Recognition is about telling the truth. And strong leaders don't avoid the truth. They communicate it with wisdom. Another misconception is that recognition doesn't lower the bar. It actually raises it. When you name someone's strengths clearly, you give them language for who they're becoming. You're saying, this is who you are when you're at your best. Now live into it. And let me say this gently, but very clearly. If the only time your team hears your voice is when something goes wrong, they're not being led, they're being managed. Recognition creates safety, and safety is what allows people to grow. Here's where recognition moves from a leadership skill to a leadership multiplier. When people feel seen, they don't just work harder, they lead differently. They take ownership. They take healthy risks. They stop waiting to be told what to do. Why? Because recognition reinforces identity, not just behavior. And identity is powerful. I've watched this over and over again in corporate leadership, entrepreneurship, and ministry. When leaders intentionally call out strengths, confidence grows. When confidence grows, communication improves. And when communication improves, trust multiplies. And trust, that's the currency of every high-performing, faith-aligned team. This is why recognition is deeply biblical. Proverbs tells us life and death are in the power of the tongue. Your words as a leader are shaping culture, whether you realize it or not. Every time you speak life into someone, you're building something that outlasts a quarterly goal. You're building a legacy. And here's one more thing, because I really want to normalize this. A lot of leaders struggle with recognition, not because they don't care, but because no one ever did it well for them. Many of us were raised in environments where praise was rare, feedback was transactional, and affirmation felt earned, not given. So if recognition feels uncomfortable for you, that doesn't mean that you're bad at leadership. It means you're learning a new language. And like any new language, it gets easier with practice. Okay, so I never want you to leave this podcast with the question, okay, well, cool, Jules, what do I do now? I want to give you a challenge for this week. And I want you to actually do this, okay? Think of one person on your team, one of your employees, maybe one of your family members, or somebody that you lead in ministry. Tell them exactly how their effort, attitude, or leadership made a difference. Be specific, be sincere, and share it in the way that they'd receive it best. Make it public or private. Then I want you to take a minute and reflect on what happened. How did it feel to give that recognition? What did you notice in their response? That's leadership in motion. Okay, friend, if today's episode brought you clarity or maybe even a little conviction, share this with a fellow leader, founder, or business owner who's navigating to their next level right now as well. And if you take on the challenge that we talked about, I want to hear about it. Tag me or send me a message on Instagram or TikTok. I love celebrating the ripple effects of bold, intentional leadership. And if you're listening thinking, my team needs this level of clarity and coaching, I'd love to invite you into the Legacy Leadership Intensive. This is where we take these ideas and turn them into lived out leadership. You'll find all the details in the show notes. Thank you for being here. Next week, we're going to talk about why clarity is kindness and how to communicate with both courage and care. Until then, keep leading with wisdom, courage, and faith. You were created for this, my friends.